The town of Farmington. Respecting history, planning the future.
It's 4 o'clock. Going to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ed, if you could lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we go to public comment, I will just reiterate, the town has been very active, keeping in touch with all the local health authorities and following the guidelines of the national health authorities. I'll remind you again, please, if you are sick, stay home, do not share. If someone goes to shake your hands, jazz hands work. Just say no shaking hands, touching elbows. Keep it safe. We'll start with public comment. Please limit your public comment to 5 minutes. State your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Emily Collini. I'm 30 High Street, Farmington. I just wanted to start, first of all, thank you to all the town council and also especially maybe the school officials. I know there's a lot of meetings going on right now, and the mental energy to do both the budget and COVID-19 has to be huge. So thank you for everybody who's doing all that work. When we're here today, my own opinion about the budget is that I understand it's a tough year. I understand there's lots of factors coming together right now. And but I also wanted to encourage the council to keep that big picture view in mind, that long-term goal, and to not get fixated on the exact number of a percentage of a budget. I think it's important to weigh the cost of a very small change in the overall increase with the cost of removing, whether it's a service from the town or a program at the school. And I understand you're going to have hard decisions to make with that. So I just urge caution when we're making those choices to keep that big picture in mind as to what is the best choice for the town and how to move forward by being both fiscally responsible but still offering the type of programs and town services that Farmington expects and that we've been accustomed to. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Hudfagner, 4 Deepwood Road. I appreciate the town council taking a look at the school budget and really scrubbing through. I think it's important for you all to do that and be comfortable with that, so I appreciate that. Looking through the town of Farmington's strategic plan today, I noticed the first goal was education. The first goal in our plan is education. Continue the tradition of having extraordinary public schools, which are vital to Farmington's long-term future. A reputation of having excellent public schools gives the community a sense of pride and attracts new residents to Farmington. Knowing that the education budget has already been cut many times before today, I'm concerned additional cuts will hurt our strategic plan. I support the budget as is, and I think it's time to send, the education budget to the voters. Thank you.
Tim Kelly, 62 Westview. I may be batting cleanup today. First of all, I want to thank you in advance for the time you put into this process. This is a very difficult job that you have. I think it may be a particularly difficult cycle this year because we're sort of caught in a bit of a perfect storm, right? We've got a impending public health crisis, a fair amount of political uncertainty, and now an economic downturn underway. I guess if there's a silver lining to that, it's that we're seeing this stuff early enough in the process that we can adjust to it. right? So normally Murphy's Law kicks in and things start going sideways in like August and October after things are already baked into the plan, and it gets a little hard to back up. Look, you have a tough job because nobody brings a bad idea to the council, plain and simple. But as it pertains to the schools, if our two biggest challenges are personnel salary costs and health benefit expenses, then we should do everything possible to not add headcount in the coming year. So I didn't see it called out in the presentation yesterday, but I believe there may be new and additional headcount embedded in the superintendent's budget. Today, we already have an 11-to-1 student-teacher ratio here in Farmington, which is outstanding, and of course, we want to preserve that. I'm not sure where you can do better. We can maintain our excellent school system without adding people. Also, we have today 725 people on the district payroll. Now, some are working 60 hours a week, and some are working maybe 16 hours a week. But only 385 FTEs are certified teachers. So we have a lot of fine people doing good stuff. But I think the majority of taxpayers would like to see their money prioritized towards the classroom. There should probably be a more extensive workplace review conducted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? If not, we are moved to item D, considering and taking action on the fiscal year 2020-2021 budgets.
So you want to kind of go through the plan of the evening?
Yes, indeed.
So you have just that item on the budget to consider the 2021. Tonight, we have the school system here. We historically do not take any action. They just go through their budget. You ask all your questions, and then we are done for the evening. We do, just for logistics, we do have sandwiches, so depending on how long you guys go for, CJ and I were talking and saying that maybe 2 hours at 6 o'clock, we could take a break if you're close to finishing up, we'll try to finish it up and then eat your sandwiches at the end. But again, we've gone different amounts of time. So we do have sandwiches and maybe 6 o'clock, and the board is already here, and that's it.
Sounds so simple when you say it.
So, and then you should probably make a motion that you're considering, and then someone second it, and then you start with the school system.
Thanks.
All right.
I'll make a motion to consider and take action on the proposed 2020-21 Board of Education budget.
Nope, I would just say the budget.
Okay, 2021 budget.
Perfect.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let us begin. Welcome. You gave a very nice presentation last night. Would you like to add anything to that tonight, or would you like to start with questions, or what's your preference?
You're gonna scrub our budget this afternoon. Just as I said last night, I hope you're just mindful of, the budget drivers, our contractually required increases in our salaries, our health benefits, and our increases in the number and percentage of students requiring mandated special services. I just also want to reinstate that we really are coming to you partnering. I'm very proud of our board. It is so important for us to partner with you, especially with the high school project on the horizon. So I hope you can see that. So what you're seeing is a budget with significant reductions already. And I really feel I have to also reinstate that with the reductions to this budget, we will be changing how we offer education in the fall. We will be changing that. So So I think we had discussed we're going to be going through each section. We'll start with each section, and then we can ask you questions on each section. If that works. And so, we'll go to the superintendent's.
Thank you.
So we'll start in the salary section. And this section accounts for 66.14% of the total budget. It does outline each of our association's increases for next year in the area of salaries. We do have a 2.79% increase in this area. What we can do is, if you have any questions about any, we're already at the benefits. We have to go back.
That was quick, yeah.
Go
right to benefits, right?
Just skip all the questions tonight, you think?
And, you know, if you have any questions about this section, we'd be happy to answer any, want to know more about.
Great. Questions on the salary? Ed?
Yep. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for all the work I know that you've put in to get to this point in the budget process. I have a question on page 6 of salaries for directors. I noticed the percentage increase is 5.47%, and then just kind of looking at the increase that we have for principals as well as teachers being kind of significantly below that. I was wondering if you could kind of expand upon that and give us some more information.
So we're negotiating with our nurses, and so we do put a reserve for nurse negotiations in this line.
Okay.
So that's why you see more. Once we negotiate, part of what's in here would then be placed in nurses' salaries. We just haven't negotiated their percent increase.
And that negotiation is for this coming fiscal year?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
So this is where we always reserve the reserve for negotiations here.
Did you say page 12 or page 6? Six. So you put that in the director's section? Okay, thank you. Other questions for the salaries tab?
Yes, Kathy. I was just wondering, can you explain for the council the sort of the undeployed positions and how that works with deployed, undeployed? Yeah.
Kim is here to provide additional information, but we always bring FTE within board policy. So it's not that we have extra teachers beyond the board policy requirement. It's just that we hold a couple because we've learned that sometimes when we deploy too quickly, the summer happens and we have a spike in enrollment in a particular school, and then we have to add another FTE. So we just hold them. They're non-deployed, those positions. Usually we deploy all of them, given volatile enrollment. Sometimes we have years where, you know, a part of an FTE or 1.0 FTE doesn't get deployed, but mostly we do see a lot of volatility in our enrollment over the summer, but we don't want to deploy all of them because we have seen that sometimes schools go down in enrollment and then some other schools in a particular grade level go up. We usually deploy those two positions in the summer months.
Sellers?
I got one. So then, on page 4, so if I'm reading this correctly, are you adding 3 teachers to the payroll?
Yeah, 3.3.
3.3.
And we can talk about that, and we have a slide that provides an overview if you'd like us to. That would be the Board of Education, the superintendent's recommended budget had a slide for the certified position. And Kim, would you want to go over that slide?
So this slide shows increases as well as reductions to staffing based on enrollment projections, looking at student needs across the district. So At East Farms, we are projecting higher enrollment and a guaranteed need at East Farms for one additional teacher. Whereas at Westwoods, in looking at projected enrollment, we are anticipating needing one less teacher than we have in the current budget. So there's a reduction there. Our preschool program is a mandated service that we provide for preschool children with identified special education needs, and these are enrollments that we can predict with some certainty rising next year, which would necessitate an additional preschool teacher. Again, in one of our elementary schools, East Farms, we have enrollment increasing there to the point where our special area teachers, those being our music, art, and PE teachers, and as well the library media specialists, have a certain number of sections of classes that they can fit into their schedule and teach, and they've reached capacity, and we need to be sure that we have additional staff there to provide PE instruction for all children in the building. So the increase of 0.4 special areas teachers will make that possible. We try to be efficient in looking at other schools. Some teachers do travel, so by way of example, we have a PE teacher at Westwoods who's able to travel to East Farms to pick up 2 classes. So we're doing the best we can to be very efficient and fiscally responsible with staffing. We're not just adding staffing, we're seeing where we can share staff if need be. The reduction in special areas and world language teachers at Westwoods, again, is a reflection of a reduction in the number of classes there. So we're able to make that shift. A reduction in art at the middle school will allow an art teacher to travel across the street to provide art to the East Farms students. And as well, the IAR has had an additional part of a teacher's day to accommodate students coming to Farmington without the level of Spanish instruction that our students have had. And we're seeing a decrease in that, so less of a need for that intervention. So we were able to reduce a teacher's intervention period for Spanish, so that is a bit of a savings there. That's what you see reflected in the reduction of 0.2 world language at IAR. The high school is implementing with the class of 2023 new state level graduation requirements, and this Aspire program is something that all students will need to participate in. They'll either be in a capstone program or an Aspire class. I could say a lot more about that at another time, but suffice it to say these are required courses for graduation. And so we are gearing up for that over the next couple of years, piloting some courses next year. And so this part-time position will respond to that need at the high school. Again, looking carefully at class sizes and enrollment, we were able to reduce in various departments 1.2 FTEs in an effort to, keep the budget to a minimum. So those reductions are made, in different departments, again, based on class sizes and enrollment and our projections for next year.
And then there's an additional slide, one more.
Oh, yes, thank you. The high school is experiencing very intense increased needs for mental health support, an increase in our risk assessments and our need for support for students, services in terms of psychological evaluation, diagnosis, intervention. So the high school has prioritized request for an additional school psychologist. They have looked across other high schools in Connecticut to see what the typical standard would be, and this would bring our high school up to the level where the most high schools are in terms of their school psychologist support. The small increase in counseling is really negligible. It's an offset with a reduction in a job coach. We had a part-time counselor who will become half-time, fully half-time, not just 0.4 with this increase. The reading teacher position is to respond to increased needs for dyslexia and reading intervention needs at our elementary level. As of now, we are providing services with outside consultation, which is an expensive way to do that work. And so we would like to have someone, we now have someone trained on our faculty in the proper programming and support that needs to be provided to students. So the 0.5 reading teacher is to really respond to those needs at our elementary grades. And the special education teacher, again, is in the budget due to a close look at needs, student needs, level of services that students are requiring. Dr. Singer, our special education director, does a very thorough review in terms of enrollment and student needs, and is requesting an additional half-time special education teacher. So in total, the increased staffing change is 1.7, with also the added 2.0 non-deployed teachers that we already know we'll need somewhere, given our volatile enrollment. We just haven't assigned which school they'll be at yet. So that is the total.
Okay, thank you for that. And this is where I get this question from when I look at the enrollment, that if I'm reading this right, East Farm's going to spike by potentially 30 students? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that throughout the whole one K through 4, or is there a particular grade that you have the spike in?
It's not a particular grade. Some grades, perhaps more than others, our projected enrollment would show that, but it's not one grade only.
Okay. Is there any look at redistricting a little bit to spread them out?
Mm-hmm. We're beginning to talk about that.
Just started. We'll be presenting to the board different options over time, so we can make a thoughtful decision about which option is best for these farms as well as the entire school district.
Thank you.
Yes, Kathy, on page 9, on tutors, there's an increase, 29% increase, and looks like it's directly tied to Title I grant funding. Can you shed some light on the change in funding, the impact obviously it's having this year, and prospective funding, because obviously grant funding is something we all consider both at our level and the board level. So if you can just shed some light on that, please.
Yeah, so as I said in my presentation last night, one of the drivers of this budget is shifts in grant funding. So you can see that we did, every year, by the federal government, our schools are looked at, and they would determine through what they see in a particular school's demographics, whether we're a Title I school or not. And in this year's budget, this year's 20, yes, it shifted. And we would not have known that while we were creating the budget, because last year, FHS was a Title I school. It has a large enrollment, so we received an extra $100,000. And during the budget process, we had taken tutors out of the operating budget and placed them in the grant, which, right, we had a nice savings in our operating budget that year. But then the next year comes, and the federal government looks at all of our schools and the demographics within our schools and said, oh, FHS is no longer a Title I school. And so then that shifts to, and that shift means we have to bring tutors back onto the operating budget. So when I say, shifts in grant funding, it could be federal grant funding. The more significant shifts often are at the state level. significant shifts, and we're in the middle of dealing with a potential shift in grant funding for the future in special education that we are making our voices heard at the state level to talk to our representatives about the impact in Farmington that potentially we will see not next year, but the year after. So we're working on that, but there's constant shifts going on, and it's always based on a town's ability to pay. In the federal level, with Title I, it really is about the demographics within the school. And those dollars, for the year that FHS became a Title I school, that was more money for us. But typically, we don't see that. We usually see a decrease in state level grant funding. So that's where that shift happened, and we had to move those positions back on to our operating budget.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Peter?
On page 10, the aides, that kind of went up by almost 8.5%. Can you explain to me and people watching generally what this whole category of employees does for our school system and for the students? And why it's went up 8.5%?
So this particular area would fall under special services and students with IEPs, and we are seeing an increased need. So this not only includes the 2% contractual increase in their general wage increase, but it also includes, additional paraprofessionals. And so you can see that increase. Let's see, on page 15.
Yep.
So you can see over time how that has increased over time, and it is all based on student need, and we are seeing an increase in student need, and you can see how that's shifting over time. And then also, and then we also, so we should just speak to, if you look at the bottom of page 15, there's some explanation.
When we had the additional enrollment at East Farms, which really is, we're seeing in this year's 19-20 budget, we had to add some additional support people there that were not in our original budget proposal. So that looks like an increase over our 19-20 budget to 2021. And we had to be responsive to the students that were in front of us and the growing need at that school.
So when we set the budget, or when we were in the 18-19 year, we were at 86.91 FTE, and then you can see how that increased over time from the 1920 and then 2021. So that's why you see a more significant increase in that particular account. And this is one of the other messages in this budget is increased student need and an increase in special services funding across several accounts, one of which would be salary, both in certified, which Kim just went over, and then in non-certified as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on salary? Benefits.
Are we done in salaries?
We're done in salaries.
So the next is employee benefits, and this account provides for 100% of expected paid claims, the administration for employee health insurance. And as I mentioned last evening, we are seeing both an increase in our claim trends as well as an increase in catastrophic claims. And so this required a rather large increase in this area, which is a 10.77% increase. And we do know that, and I mentioned this last night, the average increase in health insurance, according to Cigna, which is our provider, is about 12 to 15%. But, so we're within that, but I don't think we usually are within that. We're usually below that. So this has really been challenging, and we continue to see very large claim trends coming in to the office as we go month by month through this particular school year. And as I said last evening, this year is so challenging for us that it has implications for next year, which really is reflective of this particular increase. This is one of the main drivers of the budget increase for this year.
I got
Question
one.
for benefits, Peter.
On the HSA contribution, the $890,000, that contribution is per employee. Where's the bulk of that going to? Is that all Board of Ed employees, or is that just the teachers? And how much, on the average, is that contribution to each person?
It's generally 50% for teachers, 50% is the deductible for teachers and administrators. Non-certified staff this year, I believe, is 60% of the contribution of the deductible, but next year we'll reduce to 50%. So we have $2,000 and $4,000 deductible. We're contributing $1,000 or $2,000 depending on what rate they have.
And every year it gets every year there's a contribution for that.
Correct.
So it's just not seed money anymore. Now it's every year it's an annual contribution to the employees.
Correct.
Per contract?
Per contract, right?
If you opt into the insurance.
Right.
Okay. I have a question. On the stop-loss insurance, because we've had higher claims this last year, do we happen to reach that particular threshold where it would kick in? So could you just explain what the impact was of that?
So we did meet that threshold this year, and so we did receive money back from Cigna for that, and I would anticipate, based on our trends thus far in 1920, we will hit that stop loss again.
Really? Okay. And do those changes, are those reflected in our stop-loss insurance costs?
Yes, because we're locked in, correct?
Not for stop loss.
No, right. So we're estimating that wherever we are, we're estimating.
So that did not save us money, but we did not have to pay out as much because of that insurance in place, so. Okay.
Other questions on benefits?
Yeah, just Kathy, refresh my recollection, I apologize, now that I'm so far distant from my tenure on the board, but we're on a September renewal, right, on the benefits, okay, so that, impacts our ability.
Very
Challenging, yeah.
To predict so far ahead when we're starting our budget development in November.
Yeah.
And we have a September renewal, so we've only really experienced, a couple of months in the new cycle.
Right,
And
yeah.
we are now setting up, our budget for the coming year. But Alicia can explain how we go through, creating this budget. We're not doing it in isolation. We're certainly doing this in collaboration with Cigna and our insurance consultant, and trying to make the best decision. But it's early on in our renewal when we create this budget. So we do our best, but as we're going through the year, we're certainly seeing that it's not getting better as we progress through the year and since we set this budget.
So we reach out to those, to Cigna and to our insurance advisor to help us with the trends, probably around November, and then cycled back to them again in February to say, okay, are we still, is this still what you, based on our last 3 months of usage, would you still recommend the same percentage increase to make sure we're in that ballpark? And they did. I think it was around it was 12, around 12. We have a meeting actually next week to do a deep dive into the last 12 months of our claim usage and get, this is a full team evaluation. It's their total insight team to just talk about how we're trending and how do we make decisions moving forward. Can we make any adjustments? So.
Thank you.
Other benefit questions? Seeing none. Services.
So on the services series, and this is 13.92% of our total budget, and it reflects a 4.88% increase. And this is where we would see a lot of our special services, contracted services that we utilize for specialized programming or particular students in need of services outside of, in a more of a consultant approach. We also have our transportation contract in this account. And this is a line that has experienced significant reductions in major facility projects. So we had over 100,000 more in this particular area, and we cut that during the Board of Education's review, and Ellen went through that reduction, particularly in the major facility improvement.
Questions on?
I have one. For professional education, 45% increase, but you have it here in the note for Medicaid revenue to be offset by it.
Which page are you on? Sorry.
That would be page 29. Professional education services.
Oh, this is the Medicaid.
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought it might be excess cost that I was talking about earlier. But it has to do with Medicaid reimbursement. So we do anticipate a certain level for Medicaid revenue, and then we apply it to this line to reduce the budget by that amount of revenue that we're anticipating.
Okay. Revenue side.
I do have a question on that as well. Are these, their professional education, are those mandated?
Right, so FI and IEP, so we, once a student goes through a PPP process, there's individual IEPs written, and so this reflects services that are required. Some of the drivers on this particular page, laws had changed recently, and we saw a bump up in independent evaluation, so evaluations being done outside of our faculty, and so we pay for those evaluations. So that's one of the increases, and occupational therapy is another. And again, it's all based on student need.
Chris?
Yep. Kathy, I'm back to page 5, feeding off Brian's question a little bit. How much of that total, can you give some more granular detail as to how much is attributable to special ed and what's mandated, what's not in that number? 25, I'm sorry. The summer teachers, I mean.
So again, this is mandated services. So if a student does need summer school programming to maintain their level of achievement and of success, and that is determined in a PPP and it's included in a child's IEP, then we do provide that service in the summer, and we've seen increases over time in the number of students needing summer school services. So $58,500 has to do with the special services ESY summer program. And then we have about $12,654 that has to do with non-special education ELL services. So we're also seeing an increase of students coming to Farmington that are learning English as a second language, and we are required to provide services to those students as they learn the language. And so that is another reason. It's not just special services, it's also a population of students who are learning English as a second language.
It's also the transportation component of summer learning, so we're mandated to provide transportation for extended school year, so that's included in that as well.
But some of it is regular ed.
Yes.
Yes, it's not all special services in this line when it comes to summer teachers. So it's also our, just our regular education, summer programming, and this would be for students who are not reaching grade level standards, and we have determined that summer school would be something that would be beneficial to this child. And so that makes,
That's about 160,000 of that 460,000.
Is
Is regular ed.
would be the classic summer school.
Yes,
Okay.
non-mandated.
Non-mandated class, yeah.
Paying the summer school for kids to increase
Yes.
their stuff also? Instead of taking it right during the regular school year?
Are you
they take
talking
an
about
extra
for high
course?
school?
Yeah, for summer.
So the high school, we do have some high school classes that we offer for kids who have not met the requirement or didn't pass a course, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, like to exceed though. What if they want to lighten their course load for next year? They'll take a summer program in order to make.
there are very few number of those classes, and the students pay for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Ed? Yeah, just to piggyback on this conversation here. So you note at the bottom there, it's due to the need for additional programming. So just to clarify, is this new classes or just more of the more capacity?
More students.
More students.
More needs,
Right.
not more offerings.
Not more offerings.
More offerings.
Right, okay.
Got a question on page 52. Just a large increase, lease of equipment,
Oh, yeah.
52.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
We made a shift this year. This account contains our leasing for copiers, and the shift that we made was with our printing contract, because we have reduced the number of printers in the district while we entertain the copier lease. It made sense from our budgeting perspective to put both costs in the same account. At the same time, we did an audit of our copy machines while we were reducing printing costs. I'll back up a second. The cost per page for printing on a copy machine is significantly less than the cost per page for the printers. So we shifted a lot of our workflow over to printing to copiers versus the printers to help save money. We had to add some additional copy machines in the district last year when we did that. And so that also accounts for a portion of that increase. So about $13,000 of the increase is the shift of the printer contract, the printer devices, and that contract covers service and supplies, or service and toner for those printers.
So are we seeing a reduction somewhere else from the printing what category would that be in?
Computer supplies.
Okay.
At the school levels. So that's, for the longest time, the printer contract was divided out amongst the schools into their individual computer supplies accounts.
Okay. So it's an overall cost savings?
It's it was an overall cost savings in terms of the shift, the workflow shift from copiers to printers.
Right.
But it's still a one-for-one, shifting the money out of computer supplies and into this account to account for that contract.
Okay.
What we did in terms of what the numbers look like in the reduction, the overall reduction, we were paying approximately $40,000 a year for a printer contract plus overages, which over the 2 years that I can remember, they were in the neighborhood of $11,000 to $14,000 in overages. We reduced our yearly printer contract to $13,000, just about. It's about just over $1,000 a month, and that covers all of our sites.
Okay.
So this is going to pay for itself?
Yeah, it is. It looks bad right now.
Yeah. Printers are easy to pick up.
Just out of curiosity, I have one other question. Does the town and services and school services combine their bargaining for contracting things like computers and printers and?
Not on printers and copiers. We actually work with a consortium of other school districts
Oh,
in the
okay.
area on the copiers and printers. The town, I believe, is in, I'll refer to that, but I'm pretty sure they're in a municipal consortium for that.
But it's good to know that you're doing that.
Yes, we do that. It's a 10-town area consortium that has come together. And we try to do it with various things. The copier leases has one that's very successful. And we're just in the process of doing our next, renewing our contract. We do things like that for paper purchasing and things.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, could you give me some examples of other ways that you're doing that?
Yes, so that
Which is
would be
nice.
other examples. Transportation, we're always, so we meet regularly and, again, come together to talk about where we can work collaboratively to find savings. So those are a couple examples just from this year.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Any other question on services?
We're
Moving
also
on.
looking at outside contractors, things like, there's many things.
Supplies.
So on to supplies, and this is flat. For next year, we have made some significant reductions here. We're just trying to find any opportunity to offset the increases in the budget, and this accounts for 2.65% of the total budget, but it is flat across many accounts overall.
Questions on supplies? Moving on to equipment.
So the equipment series is about 23% of the total budget. There's a significant decrease here of 47.4%. And this reflects the reductions that Ellen went through last week with the Board of Education had implemented, and just going over how this will impact the school district. I mentioned last meeting that it will impact approximately 1,300 students for next year. We do hope that it's a one-year action that we are taking to try to get through this budget year. But if we're going to continue the program that we have for our students when it comes to Chromebooks, we would need a significant reduction in the 21-22 school year to get it back up to where it has been. And do you want to add anything?
Increase. I was like, wow, that's, wow. Good job, Kat.
Chris, maybe some vibes. No, it would be a significant increase. Thank you so much.
Questions on equipment?
Yes, Ed has one, CJ.
Go ahead.
Yeah, on page 91, I just noticed kind of a big increase there for new equipment. I wonder if you could go into more detail and tell us about the new equipment that you're purchasing there?
Yeah.
That's the Chromebooks. So in previous years, we've budgeted for Chromebooks in replacement equipment because we're replacing devices that existed in the classrooms. They stayed in the classrooms. Because we were proposing a take-home one-to-one, those expenses moved to new equipment because the idea here is that we will be issuing these devices to students to take home. They will use them for 4 years. When they come back, we're either going to be recycling them for parts or recycling them for scrap. So it's new equipment. It won't be coming back, necessarily be coming back into rotation. So that's why there's each year there's somewhat of a shift between new and replacement, again, depending on how we're classifying its use within the district.
Thank you.
And Matt, maybe if you could just, as a parent of, children, explain maybe an insurance program and some coverages we have with this take-home program, and could it impact future, budget cycles with regard to replacing broken, dropped, kicked machines?
So where we stand today in terms of this budget and what we're looking at for the fall is a take-home one-to-one program for students in grades 5 through 8. we've worked over the past couple of years. A lot of the new Chromebooks, the new devices went into Westwoods, and we have moved, each summer we've moved those devices with those students. So the students who are currently 7th graders have the same devices that were purchased the year that they were a 5th grader, and the intention would be that for their 8th grade year, they're going to stay, that pool of devices is what gets issued to the 8th graders. We would kind of continue that model, and the thought is for 21-22, we would then expand to the high school, so we would be purchasing devices for incoming 5th graders and incoming 9th graders and continue that through. As far as an insurance program, a lot of other districts throughout the state have thankfully piloted this in advance of us. We're one of the last ones to shift from that cart model to a take-home one-to-one. I've looked at what a lot of districts have done from an insurance model. Some contract out to third parties for insurance, which may or may not also cover accidental damage. Most districts are self-insuring, and it's an opt-in program. It's hard to mandate insurance at this point. Initially going into it, most districts pick what they think based on the breakage that they currently see. They pick a dollar figure that would cover that major component. Right now, we're targeting $35 per year. That $35 per year would cover parts up to the value of the Chromebook and or the replacement of a Chromebook within that 4-year period. That $35 equates to the typical things that we see are cracked screens, busted keyboards, or a motherboard that goes, and that could be due to a spill, a drop, whatever. On average, that $35 will help cover those costs. The majority of the districts, again, it's opt-in. We encourage parents to do this to not only to help us, but to help them. This would go into an account that we would use for repairs for all of our Chromebooks. Most districts tell me that if you have a student who has a broken Chromebook who does not have insurance, in most cases they've had luck with, if the cost exceeds the yearly insurance amount, you contact the parent. They can opt in at any time. There's no reason not to allow parents to do that. It is a lot of working with the community and working with parents to make sure that the student is supported with the technology in the end. We would have to take any of this in terms of this insurance piece, would go through the board's policy committee, and we would have to address that from that perspective, which we're holding, again, that's pending full budget approval.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on equipment? I did notice the new equipment versus the used. The used is replacement is significantly down from the new, so that helps, I guess, here. Reduction in there. Dues and fees.
So this reflects 23% of our total budget, which is a 2.9% increase. This particular series is a very small group of accounts for memberships to organizations and liability and property insurance.
Questions on dues and fees? Moving capital.
So we went over our capital budget earlier, and I would just, if you have any, I would shift to that presentation. If you wanted to ask any questions related to capital, we're very open to having any discussions about, what we put forward in our capital budget. And just as a reminder, we work really closely with the board and town council to do a comprehensive K-8 facility review, and that's provided us with short-term and long-term facility projects. And even as we're looking at the high school, we do have a financial plan that looks out and includes the capital budget and includes the K-8 review recommendations. So I know we've done a lot financially at forecasting, including potential high school projects, yearly capital and operating budgets. So, we're following, our plan to implement particular projects that either are items that are within our K-8 recommendations or issues that are just emerging that we're seeing. We also really look at that 7-year plan and try to be very thoughtful about where we place particular projects, because some projects are much larger than others. So, again, open it up to any questions you might have.
Right. Questions on capital? I know you have some questions on capital. None?
I'll go on.
Yeah. Peter?
You can go.
I'll just start here. On the classroom furniture, I'm sure it's in my explanation, but maybe you can explain where the furniture or the bulk of the purchases would be going? Or is it town-wide?
So we would be doing the last grade of elementary schools. We've completed every grade level except second grade. So that would be second grade classrooms throughout the district, furniture upgrade, and then we allocated approximately $35,000 of that towards beginning to upgrade at IAR.
Good.
Actually, I'm good for now.
Okay, let's keep moving. Anything to add on grants?
So you can see in this particular section, the grant section, all the various revenues that we received for grant funding. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about that. One of the things I will mention is the excess cost grant, a tuition grant, which is on the second page, outlines what we've been receiving from that particular grant. And we received this grant when a particular student's services exceed 4.5 times our per pupil expenditure. So our per pupil times 4.5, and anything over that, which we are supposed to get 100% reimbursement from the state. That has been flat funded for many years, so we typically, depending on everyone submitting throughout the state their excess costs, that usually falls in the range of 70% reimbursement that we receive back. And that equates to the amount that you see here, about, and this can change, but, $677,000 and change. So this is the grant that we've been talking about with our representatives that has a potential for decreasing quite a bit, which would mean that now locally we would have to fill that gap. So that's just an example of how grants are shifting quite a bit. And now this is a proposal. At this point, it hasn't been approved, and we're watching it very carefully, and we're submitted testimony to express what the impact would be for our Farmington community and our students here. But that's just one example of revenue that we receive from the state level, but that it can be, it can change. And so we basically put our budget together and all the costs, and then we look at our excess costs and what we predict to get in the coming year, and then we reduce our budget by this amount. And we expect to get that revenue in to fill the gap. And so this is a very important grant that we receive and that we hope to continue to receive to offset those costs.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. If you could just explain to me, I mean, obviously we have a lot of grants coming in that pertain to a lot of the expenses we saw earlier. How does that work exactly if we don't know we're going to get it? Are we requesting money for certain things and then we get a grant? How does that back out of the budget, or how does that work exactly? I just don't know.
In this particular case, we've already, we've reduced the budget by this amount. We expect to get this amount.
So you kind of need this to make the programs work.
What's that? Oh, yeah, yes, right. So we have to submit all of
We
that
submit
information to the
report,
state.
yes, we're responsible for submitting reports at certain times in the year, and they are connected to student, obviously student needs, when Kathy was referring to, do we hit that threshold of the 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure? And that's how that money is allocated. That's how we determine how much we get. So we do the best we can to make a prediction of what we'll get, and we certainly rely on the funds, because we consider
To meet that spending threshold.
Yes.
And if we don't get it, if we don't get the grant, what happens then? If we've cut our budget to the point where we're relying on this, we're not guaranteed it.
Well, typically, we have received the 70%. This new proposal at the state level would not impact next year's budget. It would impact the year after, so there'd be time, hopefully. In December, we get the amount that they would, if this proposal were to go forward, it is scheduled every December that we would get that amount, so that we would figure that into the budget. But it has that potential for a significant increase in 21-22. So I say, I give it as an example because that is something that, we watch very carefully, and we are trying to prevent this from happening, because we know that, in out years, this would have a significant impact on our budget. We did get a question from the board about what is the exact percentage we've received over the last 3 years, because if you remember in my presentation, or I think it was in Ellen's presentation, we talked about actually reducing by 36,000. We reduced the budget by 36,000, and that's because in our calculations for developing the budget, we're very careful about how we figure in money that might not come in, and so we figured at a 65% reimbursement. The board is looking for ways to reduce the budget. Since the last few years, we've received in 16-17 75% in the reimbursement, in 17-18 72%, in 18-19 73%. They felt comfortable in reducing the budget by 36,000 and anticipating a 70% reimbursement. So, we do try not to overestimate what we're going to get and be careful about our budgeting. But that is, that's an example of both a budget reduction, but also looking at the percentages we've received in the last few years. It was, what the board felt it was like that it was a safe reduction because we've received over 70% in recent years.
Thank you.
Any other question on grants? Shall we move to the support document? See if we have any questions there. I do actually have one question in the first section, just the annual increases in the adjusted appropriations category, page R3. When there are adjustments made to the appropriation, at what point does that generally happen? And what does that usually entail?
When are
We had, let's see, 5 different years where there are adjusted appropriations. Do you see where I am? R3? Sorry.
The only one she might have knowledge of is 13 and 14, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were created to begin with, and then top numbers, so I'm not sure if that was like a vote situation.
Okay, that's, all right.
Yeah, I'd have to really look at that particular
Okay.
year to remember the story.
I
of
couldn't
that
remember
year.
it, and I-
We can get back to you.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance
on
to
that
call you beforehand,
question.
so sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of that 13, 14.
You stumped the board.
I wasn't trying to.
You did. I couldn't figure that one out either.
No, that wasn't.
Okay, well, that's, when you get a chance, I just, okay, yeah, I couldn't remember what happened that year either, so. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, I know what it was.
Okay, good, see that?
Homeland Security, was it the year that we took the Westwood? Could that have been the year? It was the Westwoods. It was the Westwoods, what was left over from the Westwoods project, and we did
Oh,
some
okay.
pretty review.
I do remember that.
Okay, you almost
Yes.
got me there. Almost.
Okay, very good. Now, I do have, with that in mind, one other point. Based on the increased percentages,
Yeah.
the increase in 14-15 of 2.69 is based on the 56,708, 790. Yet the increase in 13-14 is based on the 56,547. So there's a phantom amount of money in the middle there. I think 13-14 should actually be called a 2.25, so. Doesn't change anything, all the numbers are the
But the
same, but.
percentage increase.
Oh,
is-
yes.
Yeah, the percentage increase is off because it was calculated before that was put in, so
Yep.
slightly more of a percentage increase.
Okay.
Thank you. No, that,
We can-
Okay. That was the only question. I'm going to try and stump anyone else. Sorry. Wasn't my intent. Any other questions in supporting section?
Kathy, I just, with the new high school project, and I think it's always good based on different audiences watching different, Board of Ed meetings or town council meetings, just talk about enrollment and the projections and where we see stressors in the district going forward.
so every year, we do engage in well, we actually have two different documents that we project enrollment. One is a long-term document, which Peter Prouda does create for us, and from an outside perspective and a 10-year enrollment projection. We have done that twice in recent years because of the requirement when you're going to build or propose any type of construction, and especially given a high school, we have to do a 10-year projection, and then the highest year enrollment is what you use to calculate square footage. So we have that long-term view, which is very helpful for long-term planning, and is absolutely why we're looking at East Farms as a school that is experiencing overcrowding. But given the 10-year projection, we are projecting that will continue. Now, the last time we did a 10-year projection and we looked at East Farms and we were experiencing overcrowding, in that 10-year projection, Peter Prouda had predicted that it would go down, and it did. So we didn't have to do anything about that because we had a short-term projection and a long-term projection, and the story was, it's going down, don't worry, you don't have to do anything. The story is different today. With our new 10-year projection, we're seeing, significant increases in enrollment at that particular school, so we do have to come up with a plan and present options. So as far as our yearly projection, we are projecting 4,119 students. I'm just going to find my enrollment report very quickly. I can go over some numbers. But we, unlike other districts, are not experiencing a decrease in enrollment. And in fact, we will see increases in enrollment. Yeah, not that, I'm looking for, not the professional staff. Yes, I have it. So we are, long-term on the Peter Prouda, we are seeing increases in enrollment over time. So unlike other districts who are saving quite a bit of funding because they have just decreased enrollment. You can look at your projections and cut teachers because you're not going to need as many. We're not in that situation. We're not able to, I mean, in certain situations like Kim went over, Westwoods were able to save, to cut one teacher because of enrollment. But every year we look at the Board of Education's policy and Kim goes through very carefully our projection and meets with each principal and then assigns, how many FTE per school. And sometimes you're going to see increases in FTE because there's increases in enrollment in that school, and other times you're going to see decreases in FTE because of decreases in particular schools. I will highlight that because we were facing such a difficult budget year, we did ask FHS to really look at every element of their programs and try to find FTE savings because they really were looking to increase FTE in a psychologist. So as Kim went over all of those increases and decreases, FHS did a wonderful job at trying to offset that 1.0 increase in FTE. So do you have any particular questions about?
I just thought it was, to get just some of the numbers out and just to where we're trending and, yeah.
So we're not in a, even though the state predicted decrease in enrollment, we did not experience that here in Farmington.
Everyone's moving here.
What was that?
Everyone's moving here. Do you have any general? Go ahead.
Sure, yeah. Under the comparative data section, the very first page, CD1, the graph there. So it's showing the state average from 2002 through the present time, expenditures per pupil, as well as Farmington. We can see Farmington for most years below that state average, which is a great thing considering the high quality of our school system here. What I'm wondering is on the state average, like in 2018, you can see that spikes up. It's a pretty steady line all the way to 2018, and then there's a spike. Do you know, is that due to state mandates, or do you have any insight as to what's driving that?
At the state level, I really couldn't speak to it because, overall in the state, we do see decrease in enrollment, and so I wouldn't be able to really speak to the drivers of, the state level average. We are a state that the costs are very different depending on the location. So if we think of Fairfield County, the teachers are, paid at a much higher rate, and so they're those are Dirt A districts, and they have higher costs because of where they're located, and that's just the way it is in Connecticut, and so sometimes you can see that's driving some of those state average increases, but I wouldn't be able to really speak to specifics about that.
Other questions
If you
on?
look on the back page, you can, I'm sure you saw it, but despite that, that growth or the acceleration at the state and just over the 17-18, you can see that where we are in our state rankings is pretty consistent over the years, like somewhere around, high 90s and the hundreds. So we're still kind of, level with where we are in comparison to other towns.
I mean, the next page is a great example. Look at 17-18. So the highest per pupil in a school district was $35,155, and the low is $12,820.
In our small state.
A huge variance in districts depending on their location, and also depending on their size. Smaller districts tend to cost more per pupil because they have to have a principal and they have to have all these requirements, and so larger districts just
less efficient.
Yeah. The lower enrollment is less efficient, higher enrollment is more efficient.
Other questions on the following tabs?
on the page CD-6, just where we rank within our JERG. So I mentioned this last evening that we are compared within particular JERGs to be fair. And those JERGs are similar in ability to pay and also demographics. So you can see where we fall also in the per pupil expenditures when we compare ourselves to the districts that are in our JERG. And then you'll see also the JERG A district there as well, and those were the districts I was referring to earlier that are typically in Fairfield County.
Okay, if no more questions on the tabs, I guess I'll circle back to the early pages, the overall increase. When we start this process, we do the same thing every year. We set a target and we see where things are going to come in. Understanding that there are a great many challenges this year, and again, showing our appreciation that you did do a lot of the hard work coming in here. I would still like to see and get some insight into really what it would have taken and what you would envision would be the results if you had hit the targets we were looking for, which is under 3%. Where do you foresee that would have brought things?
Well, as I said, and probably similar to what Kathy Blonsky had also said, given the drivers of this budget, it was really difficult to make reductions without impacting programs, because I did a lot of that work ahead of time before it was presented to the board. School and program leaders submit their budgets, we meet with them, and we just say, we just can't do this, and we 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 reduce the budget as much as possible to bring it to the board level. And then the board took a look at it, and knowing the context of this year, did some heavy lifting when it came, when they looked at potential reductions, many of which will have an impact on the school district. So when we think about next year, the operating budget, any reductions in the operating budget would have a significant impact on programs and on students. We certainly would want to look at our capital budget and try to find ways in which to delay projects potentially into future years, given the unique context of this budget year. We've also, we've looked at one particular area, and what worries me about any of these cuts is that many of them you're going to see increases in the year after. But one thing we have looked at as a potential, we're dealing with a significant health issue as a community, but well beyond our community. And we were thinking, is it even viable to, we have to have the special education summer programming, because that is part of a child's IEP. It's not something we can pull back on and not do this summer. But on the regular education or general education side, we were thinking, that might be an opportunity, knowing that this is going to be a very challenging end of the school year, and maybe we would hold off for, potentially on summer school for regular education students, as long as we were not impacting high school students for credit recovery. We don't want to impact students' graduation and getting the credits they need to graduate from high school. That is approximately $160,000 to run our regular education K-8 programming. That's one area we've looked at. If we weren't
facing this particular health issue, that summer programming really aligns to our mission and ensuring that all students meet grade level standard and get to where they need to be. And that program helps students in the summer where we do see learning loss maintain or accelerate their learning.
We're just not sure if that's even going to be viable this summer, given just what we're seeing right now. We don't know how everything will play out. So that's one particular area in the operating budget.
And I just think it's important to say, too, if there were further reductions to the budget, it would be ultimately the board's decision. And Kathy certainly can't speak to the board. I am one vote myself, representing them, but I don't know what we would do. So it's very difficult to, forecast what the entire board, what there was an appetite for. As I said, further reductions will change the way we offer education next year. And we've already been through a very challenging process. I can imagine, they're different, we have different viewpoints, perspectives, and I'm sure we would all come together, but we have no way of knowing what the board would do with further reductions.
Well, I will say it's a little disappointing to me because frankly, I know most years we set a target and we're given a very different number. Understanding the challenges ahead, I would have hoped you would have had some of those conversations so you'd know what it would look like. And it's not, this isn't a new question tonight. This was when we started the process. So that part, as I say, is a bit disappointing. I understand there are challenges, and we can't even really talk about the potential health issues because that will change everything drastically if we're faced with them. And certainly, it's not our job or position to do any micromanaging or say where you're cutting. But it is our job, and we are the fiscal authority in town, and we will say how much we feel comfortable with and what we feel the town's appetite is for the operating and the capital. So I think it would be very helpful for us to know what type of impact that is. And I understand you're saying the budget you presented is where you feel you really need to be. And understanding you did a lot of hard work there, I think it would be best for a dialogue if we knew, if we really felt we can't do this, where the impact lie. And if that's not something we can have any further discussion about tonight, that's fine, but I would hope you'd have some insight into that. Is there anything else you can offer to give us an idea of what areas we might be looking at?
So it's a little challenging for me because I can recommend reductions, but I am not the final decision maker. The board votes on each of the reductions and approves each reduction. So I could present something that ends up not being reduced, and that's where, for me, it's challenging for me to say here are some potential areas. I can describe that the areas, we're always planning because we don't know what's going to happen in a budget area, in a budget year. So we absolutely meet with our DLC. We talk about it. What if it was this reduction? What if it was, a larger reduction? In this particular year, in each of our planning sessions, we would be closing down, programs which would impact many students. I can't find, at this point, programs that aren't going to impact students. You're talking class size, programs that are core academic areas. That's what we'd be looking at. I wish I did have better options. It's just that we really kind of exhausted a lot of those places where, and I know the town council tries to achieve this too, where we're not impacting students. We just try not to do that. We're just not in a budget year because of the reductions we've already made. But more importantly, because of these budget drivers that seem to all have come together in one budget year with health insurance, special services, and shifts in grant funding. So it's hard for me to give you specific examples, because if I were to give them to you and you considered those, when I get to the board, those might not be the reductions. They may be very different when we get to the board level, and they approve those reductions in the amount that, the budget was reduced. But I can say, that those areas I mentioned those are the areas we would look at, core academic programming, class size, all of which, as Ellen said, would shift our programming and the education that we provide. And that's why, we're certainly open to looking at capital, and we're certainly open to, the summer school. I think given everything that's going on, it does impact 225 students. But we also are looking at this as maybe a one-year moratorium and then revisiting it in the next budget year.
CJ, it's not at all that we are trying to be difficult. It's just the way we just can't really forecast what the board is going to do with the reduction. It also, we just really can't, we just don't know at this time.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I know you're not trying to be difficult. I understand, as is often the case on the council, the board is, I'm sure, trying to decide where they feel they can be and what would be next and where the cuts were. I guess most years we get an idea as to the different levels of cuts.
We've already done them. That's why.
I understand. You've
And so
already,
that's-
you've already expressed that
Yeah.
you've gone through the list of cuts. It's, my real challenge, and I'll certainly leave my colleagues up here to have any comments is going into the fall when we're looking to do the largest expense that we will ever have made in the history of the town. We've based a lot of those assumptions on what we can afford, and the target range for that building was based on what we were looking at as a past history of spending and projecting going forward. If we enter into the last budget before telling the public this is what we think we can do, and we've blown through those numbers before we've even voted on putting in this new building, I think we're doing nothing at all to help our cause to get us a new high school, which I know we all are in agreement and supporting of. So I'm trying to put us in the best situation we can be in to go forward. Understanding that you've put in a lot of hard work here and gotten to a certain level. If we just ended the conversation here, I think we'd probably end up on Saturday picking a number at random. I'm hoping just to get some kind of insight. The town manager gave us a number and said, this is what I can do, and here are the things that we don't get anymore, and here's how it looks. And we have to think very seriously about what that does. Could we give the town a 2.98 and not fund some of the things that we have always done in town and been, penny wise and pound foolish? We don't want to not spend on things that will hurt us farther down the road. That in mind, I think we have to be very cautious about putting in when we have a target of below 3, just barely below 4. And I understand your reasons behind it, and I understand there are some challenges that were totally unexpected and one-time challenges. I mean, the insurance is not a great thing. I mean, we've got the pension changes on the town side, which is both for town and school pensions involved. So there are challenges in here, but that's, those are my thoughts. Does anyone have anything to add up here? Been a very quiet group today. Yes, Bob.
Yeah, I would like to say that, number one, speaking for myself and possibly everyone here, I think we really appreciate where we are as a town. We have a lot of common goals, And I do believe we are here to partner, we with you and you with us, to do what's best for the town as a whole. Certainly, we can make an impact with what we do with our schools and what we do with our town. And we're here to make sure that that happens for everybody. And know that we're doing everything in the best faith that we can bring to the table. I'm not here to harm anybody. We're here to make sure everything goes well and that we help the town grow and succeed and flourish. That's really how I feel. And I think you guys did a tremendous amount of work here. Thank you.
Thoughts, questions, concerns?
Just a few words. So I think most, if not all of us, ideally don't want to decrease programming. That's not what we want to do. Obviously, it's a challenging year. Obviously, we all have our eyes on the high school and getting that passed, and that's very important. And I always try and take a balanced approach to the whole budget process, thinking of everything, all the impacts. And that's what I'm going to do this budget process. And just to add for anyone that hasn't done the math yet, the $160,000 for the summer school, if we did that reduction, would bring the percentage increase down to a 3.72%. So just so we're all aware of where that brings us now and as we move forward with our discussions.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, I'll thank Ellen, Kathy, Alicia, Kim, and Matt. This process, obviously, from this side of the table, for me, I feel your pain, let's just say. I mean, I take this very seriously, given my tenure on the board and as board chair. So I appreciate everything you've done, partnering with us, and as we go forward. The challenge will be for us, and we will work collaboratively with you to hopefully to come to the right resolution. And I just hope everybody appreciates, both in the public, the challenging times, as CJ mentioned, given the failure of the first project and trying to get it through. We have to be ultra sensitive to this, but I just want to, congratulate you on a job well done. I appreciate the budget. I appreciate, and I'm very sensitive and hypersensitive to the position you're in, Ellen, and Kathy and Alicia and everyone else. So I appreciate your efforts, and hopefully we'll continue to come to the right resolution to this challenging time.
If I could circle back to one other question.
Can I just say something, CJ, before?
Yes.
And I think beyond, I appreciate our superintendent speaking to the potential of, or option of our summer school program, but I just maybe, you won't feel good or you'll feel better, but anything beyond that, it almost is not insignificant, but it's a moot point, because we won't feel good about anything below that at this point. So that's what I mean by changing education. So it really, on some level, really, if you feel you need to reduce us and you want to get to that percent increase, which I understand, but you also have to understand, too, that there are many of us, and there could be potentially a large number of our community that is very supportive of the high school project, but not compromising our educational system. So I think that's very important to keep in mind too. We don't want our community showing up for in our schools in September and saying, well, we are, we want this high school project, but look what we've done, and also as a town, by the way. So I just, if it really, beyond what the superintendent has spoken to, none of the options are good.
Would you like to talk at all about the capital portion of the budget?
Sure.
And are there potential reductions in that area?
Just take. So we did look at the capital budget just for potential areas where we could postpone projects, push them out into future years. And we did look at technology as one potential area. Right now, it's at 500,000. If Matt's going to go to the capital projects. It's at 500,000, and we would reduce that by 90,000. We could do that and still achieve what we need to achieve. In the area of, we could push off the Noah Wallace partial roof replacement for 450,000. We're not currently even though it's at the end of its life, we're not experiencing issues with it. So we could push that off. And we've achieved a great deal in roofing projects in recent years, and we do acknowledge that for 2 budget cycles, we have achieved an amazing amount in capital. So we could put that in MEP. We could reduce from 475,000 to 315,600. And that would, just impact various areas, but we would adjust areas and try to achieve as much as possible in that. In structural architectural, it's at 556.
I'm sorry, what was the reduction on that one?
Oh, sorry.
315, 600.
Well, I just have, someone could do
Yeah.
that for me.
Well, 315
I
is what
think-
you're going to. That's not the reduction,
No.
right?
No.
So the reduction was 160.
Right, we're reducing
Okay.
to the level of 315,600.
Okay, 160 is the reduction.
Sorry, I'm not.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. So it's 159,400 that we would reduce MEP. In structural architectural, from a level of $556,983 to not a reduction, but a total of $337,166, and that is a $219,817 decrease. Thank you, team. In security, this one I can do very easily. So we would bring that down to a $75,000 level, which is a $25,000 reduction. In code and safety, this is difficult to make a lot of reductions, but we would make a $16,000 reduction. We would keep the design of IAR because that is a future project, and we would like to achieve that in future years. We would continue with right, we're not reducing the vehicle. And let's see, when we look at the total.
The total reduction?
Yeah.
Across the board is 960,217.
Okay.
And that keeps you pretty well in line with, as far as increase, that's a good decrease. Thank you for that.
Furniture you keep, hold them up.
We're always open to postponing if we need to. I mean,
Yes, you're keeping.
had kept it in there, but we would
Yeah.
certainly have conversations about it.
And the cafeteria, you keep that.
I think the cafeteria is a real need that would need,
Yes,
right.
that piece of equipment, yes.
Okay.
Is the vehicle a replacement or a new,
Sorry, can you say that?
the vehicle?
The vehicle, that is
Yes,
also.
that is a replacement of our mechanic's vehicle, who drives around the district. He's, right under Tim Harris, but it's in need of,
Isn't that like a 15-year-old vehicle or something?
yeah, it's rusted. It's,
Shot.
we kept the pictures, we kept the pictures to ourselves.
Thank you. Let's not talk about the age of vehicles, because when the town comes in, I think
Yeah.
we're talking about a 1998 truck they want to replace. Go down
That was a
road right
great
now.
year.
I'm stalling because Ed's working the calculator. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I was just looking at, I guess, one of the bigger numbers that you threw out there was the Noel Wallace partial roof, and then you did mention that there's no current issues, although it's at the end of its useful life, technically. So if we did take that, or push that out to another year, delayed that, and then and we did the summer school, 160,000, that would bring us down to a 3.05% increase.
Well, you're mixing two things, though.
Yeah, you're mixing.
You took that out of their operating. This is all capital.
Oh, right, okay.
I like your thinking.
Yeah, sorry.
I like your thinking too.
I knew you would.
Sold.
I'm hoping Chris would, call the vote or something, but it didn't happen.
Second.
Okay.
Point over.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board side? I'm looking at like a world record here. How many questions? I don't think Kathy's going to give us dinner if we can't talk for another 20 minutes. No?
Yeah, good.
Well, I do appreciate all the work you did. The capital in particular, I think that's very helpful. We have, obviously, the last 2 years, through bonding and capital, we did a great job of catching up and giving ourselves a little bit of cushion. Is Noah Wallace actually the last roof that's going to have to be done for a
Yes.
while?
And it's
So-
just a partial of a
Partial.
roof.
Yeah,
but for-
that's amazing. We
It
finally
is.
caught up on the
It's
roof
awesome.
roofs. I will ask about the security. We've done a great job also with security throughout
Mm-hmm.
the system. This won't have any dramatic impact, this cutting the security for this point? Okay, and how are we doing on our timing of the projects and getting the projects through? Because I know, at certain points, we got a lot of things on the table, and it was kind of taking us some time to catch up. Are we doing well on catching up with the ones that are on the docket now?
Yep.
Pretty much
Yes.
by December of 2020,
Okay,
all of those projects, right, would have been completed.
great.
So, right on schedule. Very
So we'll
good.
be just starting the process at East Farms. Again, pending how this spring goes, but everything's, getting everything lined up
Yep.
into the state, all of that.
Any other questions?
So
Yes?
I think you're done for tonight.
Okay. We have no executive session. I will give you a quote from Helen Keller this evening. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll accept the move for adjournment.
Okay, yeah.
I will make a motion to adjourn this evening's
So it's just on the capital reduction, so there's 90.
All in favor?
Technology?
Aye. Chairman, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah.
Stand adjourned.